Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them, or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 4,248 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. I'm not gonna lie, guys, last week was rough, and it's not all that much better now. If you saw last video, I unfortunately lost my kitty, other kitty of, God, we've had him since 2016. It was a stray cat that we rescued, so no idea how old he was, and it was a slow battle that, looking back now, maybe we could have done more. But that is neither here nor there. Thank you guys so much, everyone who commented with well wishes. It really helped. So just want to say thank you again. I've gotten back on the SNI. I have started to play some games, some Xbox 360 games, but the Switch video did so incredibly well that we're gonna run it back. So let's see, is this one going to do well too? I can't, thank you guys so much. And to all the new people as well, we gained 75 subs since last week. Insane. I just can't thank you enough. Now, a comment that I kept seeing crop up was that I have a lot of spoilers in what I'm talking about. Which is funny. I usually get comments that say, how come you don't beat the games that you talk about? Versus this week, because I talked about so many games that I have beaten, I will say, everything I say, I do not consider a spoiler. You got to remember, especially for your younger people out there, the way that television, movies, everything was advertised, it would say, someone is gonna die this week. Or you'll see a trailer, and to this day, a trailer will show you everything. So what I consider, what I say is selling points. You know, if I get into a game and there is multiple endings, I want to know that, especially on a 30-hour game, because I don't want to then feel like I'm obligated to beat the game again. However, I hear you guys. I will try and be more cognizant of that, but at the end of the day, guys, if you're watching something like The Truman Show, if you're surprised that he's actually on a television show, you kind of miss the point. You know, Die Hard, there's terrorists in it. The gosh, Jingle All the Way, he gets a Turbo Man doll. Like, not everything subverts expectations. I don't know about you, but when I play a video game, I play it for the gameplay. The story is secondary. I'm not going to go out there and just start spoiling the end of The Last of Us or the end of Red Dead Redemption or anything like that. But you know what? When Mario gets to the end of the level, the princess is in another castle. So, yeah. Anyways, that's where we're at on that. We got another 10 Switch games we're taking a look at. If that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
So the first game I wanted to take a look at this week, which was funny because one person did comment, where was this game? And for astute listeners of the channel, you'll notice that my background music, other than Corridors of Time at the beginning, is a song from the game Astral Chain. So it's just the police station background. I don't even know how that became the background song I use on this. It just was catchy, and then before I know it, it's just what I use on loop for everything. Game-wise, this was made by Platinum Games. When it was announced, this was around 2018, so this is when Nintendo was really starting to reassert itself. The Switch was having massive legs, massive success. You had Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, all these games were coming out, Xenoblade 2, and then there was this new game by Platinum that it kind of looked like a co-op Platinum-style Bayonetta game, but it's not. It's a one-player game, and in this, spoilers, you get to control a side character that can be changed. So you have one that will be more of a tank, one that's more of a range weapon. So you have these 5 different, like Astrals, I think. It's been a while since I played this, bear in mind. And they are chained to your character. Now, I've done a dedicated video on this years ago, almost a decade ago. So if you want to check, well, 8 years ago, 7 years, whatever it came out. If you want to check that out, take a look. I was honestly not that all impressed with it. just because the combat got a little redundant. It's kind of a, milquetoast story plot, all that. But as far as uniqueness goes, I haven't played anything like it. And of the other Platinum games, I've kind of gotten over the formula. I feel like when they did Bayonetta and then Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, they hit the ball so out of the park that they kind of rested on their laurels for the next few games that came out. I mean, other than the Turtles game that I think was good, a lot of the ones that have been coming out recently just were okay, but nothing like out of this world. And this is a game that, mark my word, will be hard to find. A lot of people are unaware of it. It came out early in the Switch's life cycle. Didn't really come out to much fanfare as well, but a solid game, and one that I have gotten... I more fondly remember it now, having, because it's so unique. And there's a lot of room for customization. You can... Spoilers... Okay, I'll stop. You can color your chain. I think they're called Astral Chain. I can't remember what they're called. But you can colorize those. I believe that there's two separate characters you can play as. So either I think they're twins, male or female. Doesn't really affect the story. It's just, it's either side of the same coin. But really, really fun one. A good one to start this video off with, and you should pick that up. Now, this is one that came out, it was pre-ordered. It was the first time all 6 of these have been available in one compilation. It was released digitally, and then you could only pre-order it on the damn Square Enix store. So it was like $100 shipped, and then it got up to like a couple $100. Though they did do a re-release of it, but I still think that this one is still expensive because it was the original release, and that is the Final Fantasy collection. Yeah, 1 through 6 collection. So this is Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All pixel remastered. The actual order. So our Final Fantasy 2 is 4, our 3 is 6, etc., etc. Of these games, to this day, I've still only played Final Fantasy 6, and even that was just a decade ago. So I am looking forward to playing the rest of these someday, specifically Final Fantasy 5 and 4. And I know there's a lot of other ways you can play it. I've heard not so savory things about the pixel remasters sometimes, where they're a little lazy, though it does give some modern conveniences as far as fast forwarding, things of that nature, and something I'm very, very much looking forward to, and something I would highly recommend picking up, especially now because with those re-releases, I think it's cheaper to find. I believe there's a way to find it where it's not so expensive, and it is one of the best ways to play all 6 of those games. I mean, hell, going back to the Super Nintendo, trying to find those are super expensive, or you're dealing with ROM hacks. On the PS1, you have to deal with all the load times. I'm not a huge fan of handhelds in general. Ironically, I'm talking about the Switch. I normally play it on dock mode. I'm probably alone in that. But something I highly recommend picking up before those get stupidly expensive again, because it's just going to happen that way. Even with the re-releases, it's got that reputation, and so people are just going to refuse to sell it for anything less. Now, one that came out that was a little bit of a shock, because we had not gotten a new game in this series for almost 20 years at the time, and it was even more shocking because they had announced another game in the series, sort of, that then just never came out back when the Switch first launched, and that game is Metroid Dread. So this is a 2D style Metroid game. In all honesty, Metroidvanias are really just Metroid games. The fact that Castlevania got slapped onto it is just because it sounded cool, and also because I think Castlevania at the time was a whole hell of a lot more popular. But when you look at it, especially when Symphony of the Night versus Super Metroid, a lot of what Symphony of the Night does never appears in any of these common Metroidvanias. You don't see gearing, you don't see spells that need to be button prompted, all that kind of stuff. Versus in Metroid, it was that way from the beginning. Well, the way Dread works is it takes that classic 2D Metroid style. It was made by the people who made the remake of Metroid 2, which was on the 3DS, which I didn't enjoy all that much. Loved this game. People will say it's very difficult. I didn't find it all that difficult. It's because there are these sections. Once again, I don't know. Is this a spoiler, guys? There are these creatures that track you down and try and kill you, and then they get progressively harder as the game goes on. It's on the advertising. Like, this is what I'm talking about. I can't... I can't question myself on what this is, because this is context for the game. If you want to go into every game without knowing anything about it, why on earth are you watching a video talking about 10 Switch games? You know what you're getting yourself into. But in this, it takes place after Metroid Fusion, so that's Metroid 4, because there's Super Metroid 3, Game Boy ones 2, etc. And it unlocks the rest of the universe. Now, I mentioned before, there's a Metroid Prime 4, the first-person Metroids. That's kind of a sub-series on a different timeline. On this one, this is allegedly the latest game in the series, and it was I didn't find it that difficult, but a lot of people consider it difficult. And it's just nice. It's got some old characters coming back. If you know the Metroid series, you can kind of guess what I'm referring to. And just a really, really solid game. There was a special edition that came out with an art book. At the time, I was getting these Switch special editions, and this was the first one I didn't get. And I think this game came out in 2020 or 2021. I don't know, it's been a few years now, but very, very good one to pick up before that one gets harder to find, because all the Metroids get pretty expensive, other than Other M, and even that one is starting to climb in recent years. All right, this is a really fun one. This was one of the games that, when limited run games finally started releasing Switch games, it was one of the earliest ones that you could order, and it's also when they started changing their formula, whereas when limited run games originally came out, you had to be there at 7 a.m. Pacific time, or whatever time they went live, order it on their dang janky order system, and then hopefully get one. When the Switch came out, they started doing open pre-orders where they would just make to fulfillment and then maybe order a round number. So if they get 10,000 orders, they'd maybe make 12, and then they have some overage, sell at conventions, whatnot. But this game, Golf Story, is such a fun little golf game. It harkens back to a lot of those games on the TurboGrafx 16, like Final Lap Twin, or there was a tennis one, I believe, where you would have a sports game that would have an overarching story alongside of it. And people will call it a kind of an RPG, but that's where you kind of start letting the RPG moniker just be a catch-all for everything. It's very much a golf game. It's a golf game that has an overarching story. And you'll pick up different types of move sets as far as different putters you can get. Each land you go to has different thematics to it. You have one that's in the sky, one that's kind of spooky. It's very much coded like a Nintendo game in that regard, though it was on other systems, or at least it got on other systems. And there's a Best Buy edition of this too, and then the limited run version. I don't know the difference between them all that much. I just know that this is a phenomenal game. Yet again, I did a video on this back in 2019 if you want to know my extended thoughts. But as far as golf games go, it has that style of the bar where you hit it, hit it, hit it. That's kind of how you do it. You can see on top, like, it's very simple golf mechanics that you can get behind. Easily would fit on the Super Nintendo. And it's just a really, really good time, and one I highly recommend while you can still pick it up for a decent price. Now, this one is just dumb fun. I cannot recommend this game more as far as a racing game goes on the Switch, other than, say, Mario Kart 8, something like that. But this is just dumb fun. That's Cruis'n Blast. So I was a big fan of the Cruis'n series. I had Cruis'n USA, Cruis'n World, Cruis'n Exotica, all those back in the day. I did not know there was a Cruis'n game on the Wii. I don't think there was one on the GameCube. And then they had ones released in the arcade. So Cruis'n Blast was more of an arcade game, something you would see, say, in Dave & Buster's, things like that. And they came out to the Switch. And what makes Cruis'n Blast so good, when you go through the levels, as the levels progress, in the race, so lap 1 is one thing, lap 2 is one thing, lap 3 is when things start going all haywire. So you'll have the ground break out from underneath you, dinosaurs start coming, a meteor hits the ground. And the same thing happens every time you play this particular level. There are other games that have done this in the past. Even Nintendo themselves did a similar thing with Wave Race Blue Storm on the GameCube, where as the levels would continue, things would change a little bit with the water, the storm would get more intense. I think the N64 one even dabbled a little bit with that, with the killer whale level. But this game is just dumb fun. Though I will say there is rubber banding galore, so it's not one of those things where you can just really get the controls down, say in Mario Kart 8, and just blow the competition away all the time. No matter how good you are at this game, you're always going to have someone breathing down your neck. There are power-ups you can get throughout the level. There's just over-the-top colors. Like, it's a perfect arcade game, and one that I think you still can get $20, something like that. I mean, other than the Horizon Chase Turbo, one of the best racing games on the Switch, in my opinion. So that is one that I wholeheartedly recommend grabbing before you can't find it. Now, this is one that I took a chance on. I believe I saw another YouTuber recommend it, and it just sounded interesting because it's a game that takes place in a radio station in the 80s, so it's very stylized, and it just reminds me of some of those, like being one of those coast-to-coast type people, late-night radio show hosts, getting calls in. But in this, there's a killer loose in the town, and by some ridiculous circumstances, you are the 911 operator on this evening. And so you have to field calls and then walk people through scenarios using logic and sometimes quick thinking to help avoid them from getting killed. And there's like 20, 30 people, as well as an overarching mystery that you can eventually solve as the game progresses. And I believe it was originally a VR game, and that is Killer Frequency. And this is a game you can get on other systems too. I want to say I got it on Amazon for $20. I normally don't get down on these type of games, and yes, it does suffer greatly from modern writing, in my opinion. But it is a fun time. I played it with Jen. She enjoyed watching it. So it's one of those good ones where if you are looking to have an audience or have someone play along with you, kind of like the Until Dawn games, Quarry, like these games work out great for that. And it had to be a VR game. At least if it wasn't, it is designed like a VR game, which I generally don't play a lot of. But the logic behind it, the thinking behind it is very clever. Gets a little long in the tooth towards the end, in my opinion, and the scenarios are very like the scenario to get you into all this stuff story-wise is very obnoxious, in my opinion. You have this producer who's there in the building with you, and yet she will never leave her room. And it's one of those things like, why am I going to leave? There's a killer on the loose. Like, yeah, why am I going? There's a killer on the loose too. All right, we're both sitting here. But anyways, I digress. All right, last few getting down here. So this is one that you may not think is going to be hard to find down the line, but it's a top tier Nintendo franchise, but one that I just have a feeling it's going to get lost in the shuffle just because it is late in the Switch's life cycle, and it's a really fun game. It just came out last year, and that is The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. So I really, really enjoyed playing this game as someone who loves original top-down Zelda. It's a great take on the formula. It melds the worlds, Breath of the Wild's overworld map with Link to the Past overworld map in such a satisfying way that the only complaint I have with the game is that I wish there was a way for there to be a true top-down Zelda game on that world. Because as Zelda, you go through it and you don't have the standard Link sword and bow combat. You have a wand, and the wand allows you to copy enemies and objects throughout the world, and for the most part, you are using the enemies that you copy to fight for you. And you can get very big, almost boss-type enemies to fight for you, and you can endlessly spawn them. There's no reagent, so you have a certain amount of little triangles that allow you to summon, say, a 2 summon, a 3 summon, a 5 summon. So if you have 1 5 summon on the board, nothing else can be summoned, but that 1 5 summon can be some giant crab thing that just destroys everyone. So it is a little bit like when I played Oblivion back in the day, where I played as a summoner, and my job was just to watch the other enemies kill stuff for me. And then I know people can get annoyed by the menus because you're constantly having to go back and forth in your menu to then grab, the beds to make a bridge, this to do this to do that. But overall, gameplay-wise and ingenuity and innovation-wise, very, very clever. And the way that as someone who loves the Zelda series, this is one that I would say everyone should have in their collection, especially because as a late Zelda release, and as one that doesn't technically have Link as the main character, I can see this becoming a little bit of an oddity with the franchise. So definitely pick it up now before you regret not getting it later. Now this is just a quickie one. There was an arcade game now back in 2012, 2015. Arcades really were at a low point. They've kind of come back in recent years now that you have people my age that are nostalgic for them. You have a lot of barcades. They've found ways to make them more profitable. But back in 2013, 14, they were not quite sure where they were. You had some barcades out there, but they were not nearly as popular as they are now. And one of the games that came out that was kind of revolutionary was a game called Cruis'n Blast. And what made this so fun is that it was an 8-person arcade multiplayer game. So you would have 4 people on one, 4 people on the other. You each have different job codes. So one would be the queen. You'd have 2 and then the other 3 could pick between soldiers and workers. And then there was multiple ways to win the match. So you could win by killing the other opponent's queen. You could win by getting a slug all the way to the ending, or you could win by harvesting enough eggs to hatch your queen and then win. And that's basically it. Now, as simple as that premise sounds, that's what makes arcade games fun. Is in practice, it is exceptionally fun. And it is a fun game if you're playing it with friends. There was an online mode. I played this with my buddy Sean the last time I ever hung out with him. So with me, him, his girlfriend, and my wife. And we had a good time playing it online. There wasn't that many people out there, but still it's a fun time to play it. And a very, very good game, especially if you have 2 Switches and 8 people. That could be a good time. I think I got it for $20. So this was a gift for him when we got there, and I liked it so much that we actually went and bought the game as well. Still really enjoyed it. And if you ever have a chance to play that arcade machine, check it out. Because I think the company who made this has made some other stuff too, which are very interesting. All right, last couple. Let's get this one over with. So this is a game that has a lot of buzz behind it. In my opinion, it's kind of the second coming of Super Meat Boy, but for a modern audience, and that game is Celeste. So I don't know about you guys, but when Celeste was coming out, all I heard was praise. This game is incredible. It's got a great soundtrack, this and that. And when I finally got to play it, because I ordered the damn limited run physical copy, because once again, I try so hard not to double dip, and I know that some of these big ticket games will eventually get physical releases, as well as it's just, there's only so much time in the day. So I knew it was going to come out physically, and then this one just got delayed, and then I had to include the DLC, and finally I got to play it, and I got to tell you, after playing it, now bear in mind, after I had played The Messenger shortly before this when I finally got to it, I was a little unsatisfied. I'm not going to lie. I thought the soundtrack was okay. The gameplay was okay, but I was expecting some sort of, religious experience. And instead it just came across like, oh, this was a game that plays this way that a certain subset of people had never played yet. And so it kind of had its GoldenEye moment, or its, Ocarina of Time moment, where it's getting a lot more praise because a certain age group discovered this game and are just talking to death about how great it is. So, once again, I'm gonna tell you what it's about, so don't hold it against me. It is a game where you are climbing a mountain, and it's using that as a metaphor for the personal struggle within with the main character as far as dealing with their own inner demons. And I know that can kind of get someone's jollies who really likes that kind of thing, but for myself, Gameplay was solid, not gonna lie on that. It is a pretty solid game. The controls are excellent. The game design is wonderful, but the overarching story about that had me a little less than caring about it. Though it is still something I would highly recommend playing. It is something I love having in my collection. I never want to be without it. I would say everyone should play it, especially if you like those kind of games, the Super Meat Boy, really hard precision platformers. But just don't go into it expecting it to be the greatest thing ever. And that's how a lot of people pitch it. It's not. It's a very, very solid game, but it's not perfect. And the story is a little heavy-handed in my opinion. But hey, if that's your thing, great. Then you'll like it even more than I did. The last game we're going to talk about is one of my favorite games on the Switch. It was also one of the most unexpected games on the Switch when it came out the first year the console was released, and that is Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Now, there is a gold edition of this that says it has the Donkey Kong DLC, but it's not on disc. It is a download code, but the game alone is an absolute banger. So I have spoken about it before. I love the XCOM series, and this is just an XCOM game, but with a Mario skin on it. And because it has a Mario skin on it, that means it's both approachable and fun. And something that they completely messed up in the sequel, in my opinion. But the first game is just so much fun. it's a turn-based strategy game, but it's not as much RPG-like as much as it's an XCOM-like. And you don't have to deal with permadeath, you don't have to deal with the ramifications of failing, and you can try it over and over and over again, and the enemies are predictable, and it's not unfair. Like, it's an exceptionally fair version of an XCOM game. So if you like the sound of XCOM 2, those kind of turn-based games, but you think it's too hardcore, it's too hard to get into, this game is a perfect light version of that and a gateway to that genre. There's, just like in Mario games, you have themed worlds. The second world's very cool because it's a fire and ice theme, and the way you can get the different characters is that they get the ability to assign sort of after effects that can trigger as they attack. So you can get one that inks people, that makes it so they have less accuracy, and also the accuracies are great. So in XCOM, when you take a shot, you'll see anything from 100% to 10% to 50%. In this game, it's literally 100% shot, 50% shot, and 0% shot. So there's no possible way where if you can have a shot, like a 99% shot will sometimes miss an XCOM. It just happens. Not going to happen in this game. The destructible environment, it is just so damn good. And the humor, as much as I don't like the Rabbids, is actually pretty funny. I'm not going to lie. It does get me time to time. So that one I recommend. It's one of my favorite games of all the Switch releases. Like when 2017, when we got Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, and Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle, I genuinely could not decide which of the three was my game of the year. It was eventually Breath of the Wild, but yes. Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle, stay away from the sequel. It's not as good. It's decent enough. If they didn't have Kingdom Battle and that was the first game, then I still would have enjoyed it. But man, Kingdom Battle is excellent. And there you have it. There is another 10 games that you should pick up on the Switch before the prices go up. Yet again, thank you guys so much. So, unfortunately, we did lose Other Kitty on Tuesday last week, about 6 hours after the video went up. So, we originally rescued him as a stray kitten out front of our house in 2017, and we would let him in and out of the house, and then eventually he got injured by some outdoor cat. And then we nursed him to health, and by that point, he just never left the house. So when we moved, he came with us. And over the years, we noticed that he just started losing weight, but it just never really hit us until we took him into the vet, and they thought it was a thyroid issue. We had the thyroid issue addressed, but then just a week ago, he stopped eating, and that's how quickly it can be. So be vigilant, guys. If you see something is unusual, if they're losing weight, get it checked out. Because I'm not saying, I mean, we don't know how old he was. That's what makes it harder too. But the outpouring of support from you guys really means the world. It really meant the world that I could do a Switch video too and get such a great response. Because I'm not getting bored of the Xbox 360, but I generally play everything. So the thought that I could do a Switch video, Xbox, PS4, PS5, if you guys are here for that ride, thank you. Truly thank you. And just hold your animals close, man. It is not easy, and get them do everything you can, and when the time has come, man, hopefully hopefully you can make it easy on them, because they try and do nothing but make your lives easy. But yes, that's what you get for this week, guys. As always, it's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.